you have to understand that the anti-French and anti-colonial, it's really what it's about is anti-colonial. It's not about anti-French just for the sake of, they don't like baguettes or something. No, this is people in Niger saying we are sick of being exploited. You should not underestimate the level of anti-colonial sentiment in Niger or any other country, right? They would rather, if it comes down to it, they will definitely choose the Americans over the French. But obviously their first choice would be the Russians. I'm just saying, don't underestimate the Americans. You saw this very recently when it came to AUKUS with the submarines, that the Americans screwed the French. They might as well just do it again now in Niger, right? Why not? If it puts them in a better position. And the Americans, another goal of theirs is not just to, get the French out because they care so much about, Niger's anti-colonial sentiment. No, they're going to do that so they put themselves in a better position and prevent Russia from coming onto the scene. Again, I'm just speculating here. This is just, we're hypothesizing. I don't think it's necessarily, likely, but it is a possibility, especially given recent events. It's just a possibility. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. I think obviously what most people in Niger, and you heard what they were saying, what they want is both the Americans and the French to be gone, period. And it's so funny because the guy in the State Department, look at what he was saying about the Russian flags. I'll play you this clip.
After acting Deputy Secretary Nuland's meetings yesterday, do you guys have any idea where things are going?
I will say that you're right. Acting Secretary Nuland met yesterday with leaders of the junta and made clear that there was a diplomatic path forward for them if they would choose a return to constitutional order. She also made clear that there would be consequences if they didn't, that there are hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. assistance at stake. As she said last night in the call she had with the press, they were very difficult conversations. She didn't achieve any breakthroughs, and it's not at all clear that they will choose the diplomatic path forward. And I do want to emphasize that she also met with civil society leaders of NGOs while she was on the ground yesterday. She mentioned some of this. And in those meetings, she heard them express real concerns about the situation and express a desire for the country to return to a constitutional order. And I wanted to say something about that because I've gotten a lot of questions the last few days about so-called protests happening on the streets. And I think it's fair to note that not everyone that supports democracy in that country can take to the streets because of potential concerns about their safety. But she heard in their meetings that there is support in civil society for a return to constitutional order.
What a cope, man. He's acting like, yes, literally tens of thousands of people are taking to the streets in support of the coup, but somebody told Victoria Nuland in private that they're down with democracy. I promise. Believe me.
So we will continue to press for that, but I think we are very clear-eyed about the situation as it stands.
Specifically referring to protests where people were waving Russian flags?
I am.
Is that what you're talking about?
I am.
And do you think that that's a significant issue that needs to be addressed?
I think I have heard questions about these protests sometimes in this briefing room, and sometimes you see people assume that because you see people on the streets, it's an expression of actual support rather than people who might have been paid to show up at protests. It does seem odd to me that if your country is suffering an attempted military takeover, the idea that the first thing anyone would do is run to a store and buy a Russian flag, that strikes me as somewhat an unlikely scenario. But I wanted to emphasize that what we heard, what.
Sorry, but the way he puts it is kind of funny. Let me respond with this. I hear you, and I hear what you're saying. What I also find even less likely is that Russia has paid people and given them secret Russian flags to randomly whip out and hoist the moment a junta takes over in Niger. I find that even less likely. Okay, just get over it, man. Get over it. This is not the first time this happens. Okay, you have to understand, it's a rejection of France and it's a rejection of the West, and you have U.S. bases in Niger. right? You have the United States going around not just Pakistan, as I showed you, but equally in Africa, just like in Asia, trying to pressure African countries into submitting to their rule and condemning Russia, sanctioning Russia, voting against Russia at the United Nations General Assembly, etc., etc. And it's not working, and it's not going to work because people have wisened up to that. It's not only that, they become more bold because they've realized they've got nothing to lose. The West have underdeveloped and stolen from these countries for so long, and then they give them like a few pennies. It's like with Syria, right? Like the United States is stealing so much oil and then gives like $100 million in humanitarian aid. The oil that you stole is worth billions over a couple of years. What do you mean 100 million? That's nothing. That's chicken shit. Same thing with the African countries. The French take so much uranium and then throw a few pennies and act like they're doing them a favor. No, people are sick of that. They've wisened up to it and they're done. He keeps using the word democracy. I mean, people hate democracy when they understand what the West means by democracy. They don't actually mean democracy, right? It means control of your resources, military bases in your country. People are sick of that word. They're sick of hearing it. And another point I wanted to make is that what I read to you in the Wall Street Journal, let me go back to this quote here. You see here how they say, oh, look, the United States has given you 500 million, 110 million. That wasn't Niger's defense forces. When America spends $110 million on a drone base, that's not building up Niger's defense forces. That's building up America's defense forces. Who wrote this sentence? Just look at this logic. It's like, you should thank us for putting a drone base in your country. We are building up your defenses. No, this is a U.S. drone base, and it's operated by the U.S. It's owned by the U.S., and it has U.S. personnel on it. It doesn't belong to Niger. Niger doesn't need the fucking base. You put it there because it's good for you. Again, this is the colonial mentality. It's like the railways in India, right? You have people to this day who are so ignorant and dumb who think that, well, India should be grateful that we built them these railways. No, we built the railways in India so we could speed up the theft of their shit. Do you understand? The railways were built so British companies could steal stuff from India faster. They weren't built because we like, donating railways to India. Yeah, what is this logic? It's the same thing here. Neo-colonial shit, right? Like, you should thank us. Thank us for putting thousands of foreign troops in your country to fight a threat that exists only because of our actions, right? Look, man, before invasion of Iraq in 2003, there was no such thing as Daesh or ISIS. This did not exist. Before the CIA was funding the Mujahideen, there was no such thing as Al-Qaeda. This exists as a direct consequence of the CIA's actions. These jihadist Islamist groups in both Iraq and Syria and in the Sahara in Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali, they exist as a direct consequence of NATO destroying Libya and destabilizing North Africa and the Middle East. Direct consequence. So it's like somebody giving you cancer and then selling you, chemotherapy. It's the same thing. That's a perfect analogy.